Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always fun to dive in.
This time, we're tackling habits.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and specifically, how they can work for us,
Right.
not against us.
Yes.
Our guide for this is going to be Tynan's book, Superhuman by Habit.
Okay.
And I've got 2 summaries of it right here.
Very good.
That's right. So no need to read the whole book yourself.
That's always good news.
We'll try to extract the good stuff for you,
Perfect.
and we'll see what we come up with.
Sounds good.
I think it's going to be interesting.
I think so too.
One of the things that really stood out to me, these summaries, was how Tynan flips the script on motivation.
Oh, interesting.
You know, we all have that feeling of like waiting for the perfect moment to start something new.
Right.
And he argues that that's setting ourselves up for failure.
How so?
Well, you know, it's like waiting for the lightning bolt of inspiration to, go for a run or something.
Oh, I see.
And it's just not going to happen.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So then we end up staying on the couch.
Right, exactly.
So if motivation is so unreliable,
Right.
what's the alternative?
Well, Tynan argues it's habits.
Okay.
Habits are really the key to automating your success.
Okay.
So think about it. You don't need to psych yourself up to brush your teeth every morning.
Right.
You just do it.
You just do it.
So he argues we can apply this principle to pretty much any area of our lives.
Okay, so I like this idea, but I'm a little skeptical.
Okay.
So like, how do we actually go from saying like, oh, I should really work out more
Right.
to actually doing it
Right.
without like relying on willpower?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's where the beauty of small steps comes in.
Okay.
One of the core principles of the book is that consistency trumps intensity every time.
Interesting.
Forget about overhauling your entire life in one go.
Right.
Instead, start with something super easy.
Okay.
Like ridiculously easy, like doing 2 push-ups a day.
Okay.
Or reading 1 page of a book.
Okay, you're speaking my language. I'm all about baby steps.
There you go.
But like 2 push-ups, is that really going to make a difference?
That's a good question, and that's where what Tynan calls the compound effect comes in.
Okay.
This is an idea he emphasizes throughout the whole book. And it's basically that even tiny actions, when repeated consistently over time, can lead to remarkable results.
So it's not just like a linear progression.
No, it's exponential.
Okay.
He uses the analogy of investing.
Okay.
Imagine putting a small amount of money away every single day.
Right.
It might not seem like much at first,
Right.
but over time, thanks to compound interest,
Yeah.
that small investment can grow exponentially.
Interesting.
So it's the same with habits.
Okay, so we're basically investing in ourselves with every little habit that we build.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
But I will say I've started plenty of habits with gusto,
Right.
only to fizzle out after a few weeks.
Sure.
How do we avoid that trap?
Yeah, that's where tracking comes in.
Okay.
Tynan is a huge proponent of tracking your habits. First and foremost, it provides accountability.
Okay.
You're more likely to stick to something if you know you're tracking it.
That makes sense.
Plus, it gives you this visual representation of your progress,
Okay.
which can be super motivating.
Okay. I've tried habit tracking before,
Okay.
and I felt like it was adding more work to my plate.
Right.
Any tips for making it less of a chore?
Yeah, the key is to find a system that works for you.
Okay.
It could be as simple as marking a calendar
Right.
or using a habit tracking app.
Right.
Even just keeping like a little notebook dedicated to your habits.
Okay.
Experiment and find what feels easiest and most sustainable for you.
Okay. That makes sense. So we're starting small.
Right.
What about those days where you just like can't muster the energy to do the 2 push-ups
Ah, good question.
or read the 1 page?
Yeah, and Tynan has this brilliant rule for this.
Okay.
Never miss 2 days in a row.
Hmm.
It's all about like breaking the chain,
Okay.
interrupting that momentum you've built.
Right.
Life happens.
Right.
We all have off days.
Sure.
But this rule helps you get back on track quickly.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like a built-in safety net
Exactly.
for those inevitable moments of weakness.
Exactly.
So, one of the things that really blew my mind in the summaries was this connection between habits and identity.
Oh, yeah. That's a fascinating concept.
Right.
It's one of the most profound ideas in the whole book, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And Tynan argues that, like, as we consistently perform certain actions, we start to see ourselves differently.
Okay.
So, like, if you write every day,
Okay.
you start to think of yourself as a writer.
Right.
If you exercise regularly, you begin to identify as an athlete.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So these tiny actions are shaping who we believe ourselves to be.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And I'm wondering, how does this identity shift actually help us stick to our habits?
That's a good question because It becomes less about forcing yourself to do something you should do.
Right.
And more about aligning your actions with who you believe you already are.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to build a habit of eating healthier.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on all the restrictions,
Right.
you start to see yourself as a health-conscious person who just naturally makes choices that support their well-being.
Yeah, so it takes the pressure off.
Exactly.
Makes the whole thing feel less like a struggle.
Right.
More like just an evolution.
Exactly.
But there's one thing I still don't quite get.
Okay.
Both summaries mentioned eliminating decisions.
Right.
How does that fit into this whole habit framework?
That is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because think about how many decisions we make throughout the day.
Oh, so many.
Right, like what to wear,
But
what to eat, whether
Yeah.
to check social media.
Right.
Every choice, no matter how small, depletes our mental energy.
Right.
And this is what Tynan calls decision fatigue.
So we're not talking about like big life decisions.
No,
Okay.
more like these everyday choices that just drain our willpower.
Right.
And habits can come to the rescue here by essentially automating those positive choices.
Okay.
So you wake up, you meditate for 5 minutes, no debate.
Right.
It frees up mental bandwidth for more important things.
I like that.
Yeah.
So we're not just building better habits.
Yeah.
We're freeing up our minds
Exactly.
to focus on bigger goals.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
It is.
But I'm curious, how do we actually make those habits stick long term?
That's a good question.
It can't just be about willpower, right?
That's right. Willpower is a finite resource.
Okay.
But luckily, Tynan gives us a whole system for making sure our habits stick.
Okay.
And it all starts with choosing the right habits for you.
Okay, I'm ready to hear about this system.
All right, let's dive in.
Yeah.
So before the break, we were about to dive into Tynan's system for making habits stick.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly simple, but really effective.
Okay.
So the first step is choosing habits that really align with your goals.
Okay. That sounds obvious. But how do we know which habits are the right ones?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I feel like I've tried so many things in the past,
Right.
but nothing has really stuck.
Yeah. And it all starts with clarity.
Okay.
So Tynan suggests asking yourself some fundamental questions.
Okay. What are they?
Like, what do you truly want to achieve in your life?
Okay.
What kind of person do you aspire to become?
Hmm.
Once you have this clear vision of your desired outcome,
Okay.
you can start identifying habits that will support that journey.
Okay. So it's less about picking random good habits.
Right.
And more about intentionally selecting ones that will move us towards our goals.
Exactly.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
And so once you've identified these few key habits,
Right.
what's next?
The next step is to simplify them.
Okay.
Remember, we talked about the power of small steps.
Right.
It's crucial to make those initial steps as easy as possible.
Okay.
If a habit feels overwhelming,
Right.
you're much less likely to stick with it.
That makes sense. Can you give us a concrete example?
Sure.
So let's say someone wants to build a habit of writing every day.
Okay, perfect example.
Okay.
So instead of aiming to write a full-length article every single day,
Right.
they could start by simply committing to writing for 5 minutes or
Okay.
even just one sentence.
Okay.
The point is to make the habit so ridiculously easy
Right.
that there's just no excuse not to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Takes the pressure off.
Exactly.
Makes it feel so much more achievable.
Right.
But even with that simplified habit,
Yeah.
there are days I just don't feel like doing it.
Sure.
How do we overcome that resistance?
Yeah, that's where setting clear rules comes in.
Okay.
Tynan is a huge advocate of eliminating ambiguity.
Okay.
So instead of saying I'll write more often,
Okay.
a clear rule would be I will write for 5 minutes every morning before I check my email.
Okay. No room for interpretation.
Exactly.
So it's we're pre-deciding what we're going to do. So we don't have to waste energy debating with ourselves in the moment.
Exactly. It removes that decision fatigue we were talking about. And by
Perfect.
setting these clear rules,
Yeah.
you're creating this structure
Okay.
that makes it easier to stay consistent.
Okay. I like it.
Right.
But of course, even with the best system,
Right.
we're bound to have slip-ups.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people just get discouraged
Yeah.
and give up on building new habits.
Yeah. And Tynan has this really empowering perspective on failure.
Okay.
He reminds us that setbacks are inevitable
Right.
and they're actually valuable learning opportunities.
I've always struggled with that.
Okay.
I tend to beat myself up
Yeah.
when I fall short of my goals.
That's a really common reaction,
Right.
but it's not super helpful.
Right.
So it kind of encourages us to kind of shift our mindset,
Okay.
view these slip-ups as data points
Okay.
instead of getting discouraged.
Right.
Ask yourself, okay, what happened here? Why did I deviate from the plan? What can I learn from this experience?
So it's about like getting curious about the reasons behind the setback.
Exactly.
Instead of just like wallowing in guilt and self-criticism.
Exactly.
Okay.
By analyzing those moments of failure, we can identify patterns, adjust our approach, and set ourselves up for greater success next time.
I love that reframing.
Right.
Takes the pressure off and makes the whole process feel less intimidating.
Right. Exactly.
But, even with all these strategies, I still feel like some people just have more self-discipline than others.
Sure.
Like, is it really possible to cultivate willpower?
Yeah.
If you weren't like born with it?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of Tynan's philosophy.
Okay.
He believes that self-discipline is not some magical trait that some people have and others don't.
Okay.
It's a muscle that can be strengthened.
Okay.
Through consistent effort.
So instead of seeing it as like an innate quality, we can approach it as like a skill that we can develop over time.
Exactly.
Okay.
And guess what plays a key role in building that self-discipline muscle?
What's that?
You guessed it. Habits.
Ah, it all comes full circle.
Right.
So by consistently sticking to these small habits, we're actually training ourselves to be more disciplined.
Exactly.
Each time we choose to follow through on the habit.
Right.
Even when we don't feel like it.
Yeah.
We're strengthening our willpower.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym for your mind.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
But building new habits takes time and effort.
Sure.
How do we stay motivated throughout that whole journey?
Yeah.
Like what keeps us going when the initial excitement wears off?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's where celebrating small wins comes in.
Okay.
Tynan emphasizes the importance of acknowledging and rewarding ourselves for every step in the right direction.
Okay.
Might seem trivial, but it has this powerful psychological effect.
So it's not just about like checking off tasks on a to-do list.
Right.
It's about like actively recognizing.
Exactly.
And appreciating our effort.
Exactly. By celebrating those small wins,
Yeah.
we're reinforcing the positive feelings associated with the habit, which makes it more likely we'll continue doing it.
Okay.
So it's like giving ourselves a little pat on the back for a job well done.
Yeah, I like that.
And speaking of positive reinforcement, let's revisit one of the most fascinating aspects of this whole book. That link between habits and identity.
Yes, please. This was like one of the biggest aha moments for me.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
In the summaries.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Tynan argues that as we consistently perform certain actions, we start to internalize those actions as part of who we are.
Right. So if you write every day, you become a writer.
Exactly.
If you exercise regularly, you become an athlete.
Right.
And that shift in identity then makes it easier to stick with the habit.
Exactly, because it becomes less about forcing yourself to do something and more about aligning your actions with your self-perception.
Right. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is.
In a positive way.
In a good way, exactly.
Our actions create the identity, and then the identity reinforces those actions.
Exactly.
It's so powerful to realize that we have this ability to shape who we are just through these habits.
Exactly.
One thing that still makes me a bit hesitant is this idea of the compound effect.
Okay.
I understand it intellectually.
Right.
But it's hard to grasp the magnitude of it in real life.
Yeah, it's true. The compound effect can be difficult to wrap our heads around.
Why?
Because it operates on a time scale that we're just not used to thinking about.
Right.
But let's try to make it more concrete.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right, imagine two people who are both trying to improve their fitness. One person goes to the gym for 2 hours once a week. The other person simply does 10 push-ups every day. Who do you think will see more significant results in a year?
I'm tempted to say the person who's putting in those intense gym sessions. But something tells me it might be the person who's doing the consistent small actions.
You'd be right. While those intense bursts of effort might seem more impressive in the short term, it's the small, consistent actions that accumulate over time that lead to the most significant transformations. It's the same principle with like financial investments. Small, regular contributions over a long period ultimately outperform sporadic, large lump sums.
Wow, that really drives the point home.
Yeah.
It's not about grand gestures or heroic efforts.
Exactly.
It's about showing up consistently.
Right.
Doing the small things that ultimately add up to something extraordinary.
Exactly.
But I have to admit, even with all these insights, I still get caught up in that feeling of, I need to do more. I need to achieve more.
Yeah.
It's like this constant pressure to be better, faster, more productive.
That's such a relatable feeling.
It is.
We live in a culture that just glorifies busyness and achievement.
Right.
But I think Tynan offers a really valuable antidote to that pressure.
Okay. I'm eager to hear it.
He reminds us that personal growth is not a race.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Okay.
And it's not about striving for some unattainable ideal of perfection. It's about embracing the process of continuous improvement.
Right.
It's about finding joy in the small wins.
Right.
Celebrating the progress we make. Recognizing that even those tiny steps forward are bringing us closer to our goals.
That's such a refreshing perspective.
Yeah.
Like takes the pressure off.
Right.
Makes the whole thing feel so much more inviting.
Exactly.
And one thing that struck me in the summaries was how Tynan emphasizes the importance of aligning our habits with our values.
That's a crucial point.
It is.
He argues that when our habits are aligned with our core values, they become so much more sustainable.
That makes sense.
They feel less like obligations.
Right.
And more like expressions of who we truly are.
Okay, so it's not just about choosing habits that will help us achieve our goals.
Right.
It's about selecting ones that resonate with our deepest beliefs and aspirations.
Exactly. So think about it. If you value health and well-being, but you're constantly forcing yourself to go to the gym, it's likely that habit won't stick long-term.
Right.
But if you can find ways to move your body that you enjoy, that align with your personal preferences, you're much more likely to make that habit a part of your life.
So it's like the habit becomes an extension of who you are.
Exactly.
Rather than something you're imposing on yourself.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key takeaway from the book. When we align our habits with our values, they become less about willpower and more about simply being ourselves.
This has been such an illuminating conversation.
It has.
I'm already feeling inspired to take a closer look at my own habits.
Good.
And start making some intentional changes.
I love that.
But before we wrap up, there's one more area I'd love to explore.
Okay.
This concept of failing forward.
Ah, yes. The art of turning setbacks into stepping stones.
Yes.
Tynan has a lot to say about this.
Okay.
It can be an incredibly empowering concept.
Okay.
Especially for people who are kind of perfectionists.
Okay, I'm definitely in that camp.
Yeah.
So how does Tynan approach this idea of failure?
He reframes it completely.
Okay.
He sees failure not as the opposite of success, but as an essential part of the process.
Interesting.
He encourages us to embrace those moments of stumbling because they hold valuable lessons that can help us grow and improve.
But how do we actually go about failing forward?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, harder to put into practice.
Yeah, and he offers a few key strategies.
Okay.
First, he emphasizes the importance of analyzing our failures.
Okay.
So instead of beating ourselves up, we can ask ourselves, why did this happen?
Okay.
What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this experience?
Okay, so it's about treating these setbacks as opportunities for reflection and learning.
Exactly.
Rather than personal shortcomings.
Exactly. By objectively analyzing our failures. We can gain valuable insights that can help us avoid repeating the same mistakes in the future. Remember, it's all about progress, not perfection.
This has been such an insightful exploration of Superhuman by habit.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new framework for approaching my personal growth journey.
I love that.
But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on the book.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways you want listeners to remember?
I think the most powerful message is that we all have this ability to transform our lives through the power of habit. It's not about having some magical willpower or talent. It's about understanding the principles of habit formation. And applying them consistently.
And what's even more exciting is that we can start small.
We can.
We don't have to wait for the perfect moment or try to overhaul our entire lives overnight.
Exactly.
By embracing those small steps, celebrating our progress, learning from our setbacks, we can create lasting change.
We can.
Become the architects of our own success.
Absolutely.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
Whereas
I'm feeling energized
and motivated
to start putting these principles into practice.
I love it.
And remember, the most important step is to simply begin.
That's right.
Choose one small habit.
Right.
Simplify it.
Yep.
Set a clear rule.
Yes.
And commit to showing up consistently.
That's it.
And over time, those small actions will compound, leading to remarkable results.
They will.
And for our listeners who are ready to take that first step,
yes,
we'll be sharing some additional resources and tips in the show notes.
Perfect.
But for now, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
What's one small habit you're inspired to cultivate after listening to this deep dive?
Good question.
Share your thoughts in the comments below. Welcome back to our final segment on Superhuman by Habit.
It's been a really fascinating discussion.
It has. It's been quite a journey, exploring how to upgrade our lives through the power of habits.
Yeah.
We've talked about how these tiny actions can lead to really big changes.
Exactly. Yeah.
From, the power of starting small
to
the impact of consistency.
Right. Consistency is king.
And one of the biggest takeaways so far is how habits can shape our identity.
It's a powerful concept.
Right, literally changing who we believe we are over time.
Yeah. It's amazing how those small actions can get so ingrained. Almost like you're building a new self-image from the ground up.
And I think a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, how do we actually make these habits stick?
That's the big question.
Right, for the long haul.
Right, how do we make it last?
That's the million-dollar question.
And Tynan doesn't shy away from it.
Okay.
He has a whole section in the book dedicated to building what he calls habit ecosystem.
A habit ecosystem.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of interesting.
It is. It's all about creating this environment that supports your habits.
Okay.
So making it easier to stick with them even when your motivation wanes.
Yeah.
Think of it like setting yourself up for success.
Okay. I'm starting to get the picture.
Good.
So what are the key elements of this habit ecosystem?
Well, one of the most important is creating what he calls triggers.
Okay, triggers.
These are basically cues that remind you to perform the habit.
Okay.
So for example, if you want to build a habit of meditating every morning, you might place your meditation cushion right next to your bed as a visual trigger.
Okay, so it's like a little reminder.
Exactly.
So you don't have to solely rely on willpower.
Exactly.
And another key element
is removing obstacles.
Okay. How do we do that?
Well, think about anything that might get in the way of your habit.
Okay.
And find ways to eliminate those barriers.
Okay.
So if you want to start cooking more meals at home, maybe you need to declutter your kitchen.
Right.
Or invest in some new cookware to make the process more enjoyable.
I love that practical advice.
Yeah.
It's not just about the good intentions.
No, it's not just about wanting to do it.
Right. It's about setting yourself up.
Exactly. By removing any roadblocks.
Right.
And another important aspect is finding accountability.
Okay.
So this could be like joining a group, finding a buddy to check in with, or even just publicly declaring your intentions.
Okay.
Just knowing that someone else is aware of your goals.
But can provide that extra push.
Yeah, accountability is a game changer.
It is. It really is.
It's like having a cheerleader in your corner.
To keep you going.
One of the things that I struggle with is feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's common.
When I try to change too many things at once.
Right, you try to do too much.
Any advice for avoiding that trap?
Tynan emphasizes starting small and focusing on one habit at a time.
Okay.
It's much more effective to master one habit before adding another one to your routine.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into that all or nothing mentality.
Yeah, you want to change everything overnight.
But you're right, slow and steady progress is much more sustainable.
Much more sustainable, exactly.
Once you've nailed one habit, you can move on to the next one.
Exactly. It's a gradual process.
Right.
But it's much more likely to lead to lasting change.
Right.
But even with the best systems and strategies, we are going to face setbacks along the way. That's true. And I think that's where a lot of people get discouraged and give up.
I think you're right.
On their goals.
Yeah.
How do we deal with those inevitable moments of failure?
That's where this concept of failing forward comes in.
Right.
And Tynan reminds us over and over again that failure is not the opposite of success.
Okay.
It's part of the process. It's an opportunity to learn and grow.
Right.
So instead of beating yourself up when you slip up, you can ask yourself, what happened?
Right.
What can I learn from this experience? How can I adjust my approach to avoid repeating that same mistake?
Okay, so it's like turning those setbacks into data points.
Exactly.
That can inform our future actions.
Exactly.
And remember, the most important thing is to get back on track as quickly as possible.
Yes, don't dwell on it.
Right.
Just get back on track.
Don't let one slip up derail the entire progress.
Exactly. You're going to have slip-ups.
Right.
Just get back on the horse.
The key is to view those setbacks as temporary detours, not dead ends.
Not dead ends. Exactly.
You know, this has been such an insightful exploration of Superhuman by habit.
I agree.
I feel like I have a whole new toolbox for approaching like my personal growth journey.
I love that.
And remember, it's not about striving for perfection. It's about embracing this process of continuous improvement.
Yes, exactly.
Celebrating those small wins. And learning from our mistakes.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would say start small.
Okay.
Stay consistent.
Yes.
And be kind to yourself.
I love that.
You have the power to transform your life through habits.
It's within reach.
It is. It's there for the taking.
And for all our listeners out there, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
What's one small habit you're inspired to cultivate?
Yeah, let us know.
After listening to this deep dive, share your thoughts in the comments below.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, happy habit building.
Happy habit building, everybody.